Kia ora koutou. Nau mai, haere mai. Welcome to the National Library of New Zealand, and to our overseas guests, a particularly warm welcome. At the National Library of New Zealand, we collect, connect, and co-create knowledge to power New Zealand, and it sounds to me as though the speakers we have here this evening are going to generate a bit of power to the discussions about how we share knowledge and ideas in the future. The event has the title of The Internet Future of Books, Art, Music and Video, and we're particularly delighted to welcome Brewster Kahle to join us. Brewster is a giant, of course, in this field, so it's going to be really exciting to hear some of his views. Let me just read a little bit of his background. Brewster has been working to provide universal access to all knowledge for more than 25 years. Since the mid-1980s, he's been focused on developing technologies for information discovery and digital libraries. In 1989, he invented the Internet's first publishing system, Wide Area Information Server System, and in 1989 founded WAIS, Inc., a pioneering electronic publishing company that was sold to America Online in 1995. In 1996, he founded the Internet Archive, one of the world's largest digital libraries, and he co-founded Alexa Internet, which helps catalog the web. Brewster is here with us in New Zealand to present the opening keynote at this year's National Digital Forum Conference. For this panel, Brewster will discuss the Internet Archive's live music library and their recently announced new initiatives to preserve and make accessible musical heritage in the future. Joining Brewster on the panel this evening is Tom Rennie, and I'm delighted to welcome Tom back here to the National Library. Tom is a publisher with Bridget Williams Books, an independent New Zealand press. Tom leads the development of their digital publishing program, including the digital first imprint BWB Texts. He was previously a publisher with Cengage Learning in London after completing an MA in Publishing Studies with distinction at Oxford Brookes University. Bronwyn Holloway-Smith is the third member of our panel this evening. Bronwyn is an investigative artist who works across multiple platforms. Her works often stem from an examination and engagement with new scientific and technological developments and the futuristic ideas and challenges that they present. Recent projects have focused on aspects of internet culture, three-dimensional printing, open source art, space colonization, and submarine internet cables. Her works have also challenged many core values established in art, especially around the primacy of physical encounter, heavy investment in the original, and a strong adherence to traditional models of ownership. She's a prospective PhD candidate at Massey University, undertaking a thesis provisionally titled A Tale of Two Beaches, New Cultural Narratives for New Zealand's Southern Cross Cable. And she'll be presenting on this project at the NDF in the coming days. The final member of our panel is Rollo Wenlock. Rollo is the CEO of Whipster, a new digital media review platform for short-form video projects, which allows video makers and their clients to review and approve video via an elegant interface. After launching in Wellington just over a year ago, Whipster is now used by organizations in 65 countries around the world and was launched globally by Rollo at the South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas in April this year. Rollo is also the owner of Alpha Bristol Films and has been a film and video maker in his own right for the last 15 years. So, terrific panel of speakers. The order of presentation will be, as I have just introduced the speakers, each speaker will have 10 minutes to describe the future to you. At the end of their presentations, I will chair a Q&A session, so you'll be able to save up all your questions after the final speaker. And just in case you're wondering, I do expect that we'll be wrapped up and out of here by 7 o'clock. So welcome once again, everybody. And without further ado, can you please welcome Brewster Kahle.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my first time to New Zealand. It's been completely great. I heard my timing was good. I avoided the storm a few days ago, so everything seems completely rosy to me. The Internet Archive, a nonprofit library in San Francisco, has been working with the National Library here for many years and archiving all of the websites with .nz at the end of them. And it's been a fabulous collaboration. And actually, in some of the explorations, we've been talking about going further. Today, what I thought I'd go into is how we might extend this idea to music. The idea that I signed on for in the internet was to try to build the Library of Alexandria V2. Could we make it so that all the books, music, video, web pages, software, ever created by people would be available to anybody that's curious enough to want to have access? Could we actually do this? And the answer is technologically, yes. And then the question is, can we get the organizational structure to move forward to do this? And we've been doing different bits and pieces, and what we've come to understand is actually it's going to be a big joint project. So I'm going to just a couple weeks ago, we started really revving up in the area of music to can you hit the next slide, please? Oh, I have one. So I can. Score. So the idea is that can we build music libraries together? Can we basically, instead of making one large library, make lots of libraries that also interact with each other in such a way that end users can find things across and basically try to find music that you'd want to listen to that wasn't what you listened to when you were in your 20s. How can you get so that you have new ideas and to go and play around? So that was the general idea. It's been a big area for us towards working with communities, starting with rock and rollers. There's a tradition of tape trading that goes such that if you don't make any money, you can record concerts and pass around the concert recordings. And we've been asking permission of these bands. Actually, we haven't. Users of the Internet Archive have, and then if they get permission from the bands to host it on the Internet Archive, then they get uploaded, then the fans upload concert recordings. It's been going at 1 to 2 to 3 bands a day for the last 10 years, and we now have 130,000 concerts, which is pretty neat. The band that started it, and we have all of it, is Grateful Dead. We have 9,000 concert recordings of that band, and those fans can't get enough of the Grateful Dead. But it's been a mechanism for us to show where a library can participate with a community where we're not acquiring it, they're putting it on the Internet Archive. We've gone backwards to go, and there were things before MP3, the format MP3 came out. One was the Internet Underground Music Archive. And it lived a healthy several years, and then it went through acquisitions and lost itself. But somebody had kept a full copy. And so we put it all up. And it turned out nobody was mad about it. In fact, people were thrilled. So basically all of this material is back up. Net labels is a tradition that started after all the CD companies were basically going out of business, but they still wanted to distribute. But it cost too much money to host the files. That it was, if you give something away, it doesn't cost you anything to do that in general. In fact, you get a pat on the back and a tax deduction. Except on the internet. If you give something away and it's popular, you can basically end up with ISP fees that make it so that you lose your guitar, or a really bad day if it's really popular, your house. Basically, it shouldn't cost you to give things away. So we said, why don't we offer unlimited storage and unlimited bandwidth forever for free? And this has been an offer that a lot of people have taken us up for, and including in the music area, and for instance, the net labels. What we're doing now is we're starting to work with real labels that are still publishing CDs and LPs to try to figure out how we can work with them in such a way that we don't end up all in a tussle. There's a lot of lawsuits that have been in the music area, and the idea is to try to make this generally available without having any of that. So we've got a couple of labels that we're starting to work with to try to figure out where can we go with this. If we go and preserve it, can we make a website around it that can at least give 30 seconds and then point back to their site or Spotify or Amazon? Does that work? And we're starting in the process of these projects. We're also starting to work with large archives. This is the Archive of Contemporary Music in New York, and they've got 2 million LPs. It's enormous, and about 500,000 CDs, and we're starting to work with them to digitize this collection. We're starting to get some donations. These are 78 RPM records that were donated, I don't know, tens of thousands of them, from the Batavia Public Library. And we just got about 50,000 LPs. We've also gotten a whole radio station donation of all of their LPs. And the idea is to be able to go and digitize these, but to try to figure out how we can make them available. But I think the key part of this is going to be working with other groups. And it could be individuals, it could be music fans, it could be collectors, it could be labels, to basically build a library together. We're getting the technology better with CDs. You say, how hard could it be? But doing a really good job of archiving CDs is not that easy. So the idea is to get the technology, spread it out, and make it so that people can build their library of music within our infrastructure or within open source infrastructures, other places, in such a way that we can find and move through it in new and different ways. You need special devices for LP covers because they're just a little bit too big for normal commercial scanners. And this is one of our first users. So we have 3 use cases. One is researchers that are writing programs over everything to go and figure out beat structures, rhythms, keys, chord transitions, and the like. I really want to find punk tangos. But anyway, so these are these researchers that need critical mass of basically everything to be able to run their programs over. And so that's one use case. Another use case is this 30 seconds thing on a website that's got metadata rich and points back to places you can buy or listen to it. And another we've just launched is a little listening room. You know, it's actually a little corner where you can listen to anything. If you slog your bones into the library, you can listen to everything. And we'll see whether that's popular enough. Maybe we could do that here in New Zealand. The idea of going and making it so that if you have a physical copy, you can have a digital version within some sort of constraints seems to all around make sense. So that's our project, and we're basically looking for people that love music, that really want to participate in building music libraries together. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brewster. Next up is Tom Rennie from Bridget Williams Books. Please welcome Tom.
Hi. I'm sort of here in part to talk to you about how hard digital publishing is, but when I arrived this evening, Brewster bought 4 ebooks from me, which is a huge number of sales in New Zealand ebooks, I can assure you, and it sort of scuppered my thesis. But I'd like to begin by thanking the NDF team, Internet New Zealand, and the National Library for organising this event, and I'm really very grateful to be able to contribute. We're here in part to consider the future for books, and when I'm confronted with this topic, I often find myself asking, what will a physical book, a print book, look like in 2030? I ask myself this because I think it's a more radical and in some ways more intriguing question than asking the same of a digital book. But I raise it here tonight because I think the future for digital works is very closely tied up to that of the future for print books. And the status of this relationship between physical and digital can be read in what we have as ebooks today. We might all bemoan skeuomorphism, we might all bemoan producing print replicas, but whether we like it or not, ebooks remain bound, I think often even subservient to physical traditions. Ebook distribution mimics print distribution, and Brewster can certainly speak to this. Ebooks remain contained as independent of other books, And the development focus for ebook standards today is fixed on writing back in traditional book features such as references as pop-ups, point-to-point indexing, or the digital equivalent of generous margins for annotation. At the same time, we're seeing a renewed awareness in digital publishing of reading as a cognitive act, a process. And this fresh awareness has brought into view the terrain narrative occupies, the actual space on the page, and the spatial experience of on the page or on the screen reading, and the paratext we use to navigate it. And by that I mean the creeping anxiety that those quaint old items appearing at the front and end of a book may actually play a bigger role than we first thought in our haste to abandon them online. And this physical-digital relationship is best invoked, I think, by Robin Sloan's concept of flip-flopping. And Robin Sloan is an American writer, and those lucky few of you have heard me speak before, or better yet, probably saw Robin when he came to Webstock, might recall my enthusiasm for this, which is essentially flip-flopping is the shift of a creative work from a physical manifestation into digital, back into physical and even back to digital again. Sloan gives an example of carving a statue out of stone, physical, scanning it with a 3D scanner, digital, editing it while digital, and then printing it out with a 3D printer, physical. Now, Sloan demonstrates this process quite wonderfully on his website, and for me it highlights several things, and I should stress that this is purely my interpretation of it, it's not necessarily Sloan's. Firstly, a shift into digital is not lossless. It's not always a shift of high fidelity. Secondly, a shift to digital is not always the final transition, nor some ultimate state of being. And to give one modest example from our digital first imprint BWB texts, and I think it will be the Morris G text that I'll be sending to Brewster, that text started in print, and it started off as one half of it was a 1970s Islands Journal article, the other is a speech for the Margaret Mahy Award. And we combined that and published it as an ebook, as a digital work in 2013, and it has now re-emerged this year in print. So you've got this print-digital print transition, and you can make the shift, the flip into digital, only then to find you need to flop back into print. But I like Sloan's analogy because I think it highlights the forces that push a digital flip into a physical flop, and back again, and the fact that those forces may often be out of the creator's hands. Those forces might be user-led, and anyone who operates a digital-first publishing imprint can give you soul-destroying stories of receiving phone calls from readers who are requesting A4 printouts of your ebooks. The forces might be wholly circumstantial, but most often they will be commercial, and I think here of the magazine, which has been releasing, won't be for much longer sadly, annual print anthologies, or of Newsweek returning to print, or any number of digital publishers that have quietly launched print programs over recent years. I find this flip-flopping concept informative because it speaks to how progress is never neat, never linear. Indeed, the future is, of course, often regressive, and it's when we acknowledge this and we plan for it that the importance of history comes to the fore. What we have done in the past limits us, but it also has deep value and relevance for the future. Now, as a publisher, I often hear reports, or I hear daily reports really, of disruption, of constant change, of disintermediation, disaggregation and dismissal. We are, us publishers, it seems, always falling. Now, I'm not suggesting history repeats, and I'm certainly not dismissing the scale of the change and challenges ahead, but the reassurances of history are there when Leah Price in the New York Times writes, "Every generation rewrites the book's epitaph, all that changes is the whodunit." Now, Leah Price is a professor of English at Harvard, and I think one of the most perceptive commentators on the book's future, precisely because she is so attentive to history. On the face of it, much of her research appears confined to the dusty world of print culture. She does a lot of research on Victorian reading practices, the rise of the novel, library history, and the history of the print book itself. But it's this longue durée of research and evidence that makes her one of the best guides to the future. It's a methodology that echoes reviews of Thomas Piketty's Capital, that if you want to project far into the future, you must first look back an equal distance into the past. Price's next book is called People of the Book, How Reimagining the Printed Past Can Transform Our Digital Future. And for me, the title really says it all. Now, unfortunately, that book's not publishing until 2017, and so I think in lieu of that, and acknowledging that I'm certainly no historian, I think the best I can offer is to just very briefly detail the challenges I've experienced, the barriers, the flip without the flop, so to speak. Because it would be very easy for me to sit here and indulge in a lot of bookish futurism and talk about books as APIs or the great yet painfully slow migration of the book towards the browser, or of algorithmic publishing, or of any number of other things. But the examples from Price and Sloan, and I think even Piketty, suggest that I'm not convinced my neat sort of digital predictions will stand the test of time, and I'm also acutely aware that these predictions will be videoed and archived and probably used to hit me around the head in years to come. But I would emphasize that, this approach I don't think is conservative. My belief is that being attentive to the constraints, the way the book is bound and tethered, is the only starting point for meaningful developments of the book into the future. So I just want to use my limited remaining time to quickly highlight a couple of the key constraints, which I hope will also give some points to the future. Firstly, it's a cliche that technology both liberates and centralizes, but there are a few better examples of that today than the massively over-centralized world we have with ebook retail. Although again, I think being able to sell to Brewster in an event is perhaps a new model, but we see it in a persistent genre bias with ebooks. It's massively centralized in terms of what genres are being well served to readers in the ebook world. We see it even with self-publishing, and I think people often forget that self-publishing has long, for decades, centuries, been a fundamental part of the wider publishing ecosystem, and its recent explosive growth has done great things for the book for all of us. But I was really struck last year by the stat that 80% of self-published works were produced via just 8 corporations. And I think that really holds up significant challenges for independent publishing, and I think it also questions the belief that self-publishing is some sort of inherently democratizing force as it stands today. Inertia is the main result of such a highly centralized environment, but it also presents significant long-term threats to diverse independent publishing. I think we'll see more talk in the coming years about decentralized networks for digital publishing, but I'm not hugely optimistic about the prospects. One of the few concepts that I've seen recently that's sort of given some sort of confidence has actually come from Wellington with Jason Darwin, who launched something at the end of last year called ReadKit. And this is basically a responsive reading system that travels within the ebook, within the EPUB file itself, and so offers the prospect of a newly decentralized form of digital reading. DRM remains a heated issue for many, but for me, the much more profound challenge is the use of open standards and reading system compatibility. I often venture that the whole industry could drop DRM tomorrow. It's not going to happen, but they could. But if they did, I still think the ability of your average reader to actually extract the ebook file and find a reading system that would faithfully render it is so limited that ebooks would actually remain at the point of origin regardless. And so it's the adoption of standards like EPUB 3, of open standards, that remains far too slow. And I think it's often hard to shake the fear as a publisher that we're faced with an immediate future of publishing non-fiction ebooks to iBooks and Kindle for everything else, and that's just not really a satisfactory space to be. It's also striking to me that at the very point that ebooks should be embracing the next generation of web standards, most digital publishing is moving like a ship in the night towards subcompact models of simplicity, typography, and pure text. The main reason for this is captured superbly in Craig Modd's manifesto for what he calls subcompact publishing. And in this, Modd questions the folly of most enhanced ebook publishing as being akin to when Homer Simpson was given free rein to design his own car, only to produce something hopelessly impractical thanks to dozens of ludicrous embellishments. But for me, Modd's example also speaks to a much more fundamental challenge of scale. Simpsons fans here will know that not everyone hated the car. Actually, Bart quite liked it, and I kind of liked it too. But even if the enhanced ebook hit the road, as it were, it remains hopelessly unviable. And almost every attempt I see to augment the book, to reinvent its future, fails from the outset to think about scale and replicability. So for me, finally, the print-digital divide is clearly a challenge to overcome, but this extends beyond questions of form and enterprise to how we perceive and work with each other. I'm always struck that my background's in editorial. I did an English Lit degree at Vic. I've worked through all the editorial rungs in publishing, and I now spend most of my time with authors and with manuscripts. I've sort of naturally moved into digital in publishing over the last few years, and I now encounter a lot of people in my industry, particularly booksellers, who describe me as that IT guy. I expect for some of you I'll appear as some sort of archaic purveyor of dead trees, but I feel strongly that we need to get a lot less tribal about this. I'm much more excited about the prospects of connecting Wellington's fantastic web dev community with our publishers. I'm very excited about the idea of developing New Zealand as a base for expertise in digital publishing, as much, if not more so, than I am about the prospects for exporting our content. And I'm very interested in the idea of libraries as publishers, of what publishers as libraries could mean, and of what open access along commercial models might mean. So I'd like to end by thanking and again congratulating the NDF team for this, because it's events like this that help begin these sorts of conversations, and it helped get us thinking more about digital pasts and the digital futures to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Brilliant. Please welcome Bronwyn Holloway-Smith.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Just adjust this slightly. I think I'm a bit shorter than Tom is. So I thought, is to kind of echo my previous speakers, I'll start by talking about some past projects that I've worked on as an artist, because one of the ways I work is to look to the past as a way of interpreting the future and thinking about imagining where we might be heading, because I think actually predicting it is a futile exercise. And so I've titled my talk, When You Let Go, Surprising Things Can Happen, because the three projects I'm going to talk about all have elements where I've given away parts of the work or let go or invited participation from the people who have taken part in them, and surprising things have happened. And so the first project I'm going to talk about was called Ghosts in the Form of Gifts, which was a work I made in 2009. It was a commission. I was invited to make a work by Massey University in Wellington to mark the 10th anniversary of their being on the Wellington campus, which they'd taken over from the Wellington Polytech. And at the same time, they'd moved into the old museum building, which the National Museum had moved out of. And so it was very much a transition time, and I had been making these drawings that engaged with the internet, thinking about internet culture, thinking about kind of borderlines of truth and fiction and believability, and been making these crosshatch drawings, and had come across 3D printed technology quite early on, and felt like there was an aesthetic similarity there with my drawings. And so I thought, oh, this might be a good opportunity to work with 3D printing. And so I developed a pitch that proposed the creation of a series of objects that were imagined as missing from the Te Papa collection, thinking about that point of transition, and did a lot of research into Te Papa's collection and identified these 10 objects that represented the different collections, whether it's Toi Māori or the nature collection or the art collection, the Pacifica collection, and chose things that spoke about copying and replication, and came up with things like the cicada, which there are hundreds of specimens of these in the collection. The Mato fish hook, again, there are hundreds of specimens of these because it was such an efficient kind of technology, and the poi similarly, and the Utah teapot, which was actually a digital file. It was a reference object developed in 1975 by Martin Newell that was used quite heavily within the CG community. And I kind of felt like there was a space in the museum for that kind of memory. And eventually that turned into this installation here. I was given a space on the Massey campus to work with, which was this glass vitrine next to the executive seminar suite, which is a kind of a function centre, and installed it kind of using museological exhibition style, but also at the same time made all of the 3D files available online under a Creative Commons license so that people could download them and print their own versions. And part of the reason I wanted to do that was to think about the university audience as being quite transient. So there are staff, but students also who come and go, and might want to engage with these files as a kind of resource. And beyond that exhibition, the work was actually picked up, and a second set was made that was exhibited at Bartley and Company Gallery in Wellington, and then in the Hastings City Art Gallery. And then sneaked into Te Papa itself for a one-day exhibition as part of the Makeatorium, which was an expo of people doing 3D printing and all sorts of things. And it's also been shown at Ramp Gallery in Hamilton. And this is a shot of the bowl and Thingiverse on the right-hand side, and you can see these are some of the prints that people around the world have done of my files. So there have been people in Tulsa in the United States and Germany who have done prints, and yeah, a few other places. The cicada image in the middle there was actually picked up for an exhibition in Chicago looking at artists working with 3D prints, and they printed their own version and it included it in the exhibition, and I was in an exhibition, I didn't have to do anything at all, which was quite a novel experience, but potentially where things are heading. And I did a bit of maths around the listings on Thingiverse just yesterday, and there have been 26,928 views of the objects in total and 6,570 downloads. So it was quite interesting uploading it because you get all this great data about who's working with your files. And the more recent thing that happened was that German Wellington jeweller Karl Fritsch actually printed a Mato fishhook for inclusion in the Wunderrume exhibition at the Dowse Art Gallery, which was a survey, quite comprehensive survey of contemporary New Zealand jewellery. And that was a really interesting conversation because even though I had put the files out under a Creative Commons attribution license, which is quite broad for people who understand the licensing schemes. In this case, and also in the Chicago exhibition, the people have made an effort to contact me to find out if I'm okay with what they're doing. And every time I say, well, it's technically you can just do whatever you want, but it's nice to be asked. And so, yeah, kind of I told Carl that, and he came up with this incredible kind of bright pink number, which is, yeah, a surprise. And the real, kind of one of the biggest surprises that's happened with this series is Quercus leaf reader Squirrel Mage, who, yes, is a particular character making use of the snail shell file in his hand there. And so that was quite a nice little email that came out of the blue, letting me know that he had used the shell in that way. And so the second project I'm going to talk about is called Pioneer City, and this is quite different to the first one. This is a project that started in 2010 and it's turned into quite a huge multifaceted project that I'll try and race through, but there are a few internet components. And it's not particularly engaging with Creative Commons licenses because of various restrictions, stock photography being one of them. But the whole project is essentially a proposal for a colony on Mars. So this is Pioneer City. It's pitched as an innovative, fully self-sufficient archaeology on Mars, represented by the Colonial Real Estate Company. And it explores potential marketing of future colonisation of Mars. And so this came about when I was in the house hunting market and really taking notice of the particular style of language used in the real estate sector, and started to make connections between that and the kind of idealised lifestyle images we were sold as colonisers in Europe by the New Zealand company, and found quite an interesting connection. And then at the same time, I was taking note of the apartments that were being built around Wellington and the way they were sold based on showrooms, often an empty shop space based on similar kind of idealised images of lifestyles before the actual places had been built. And kind of took this to some sort of, I hope, logical conclusion to develop a showroom for a property on Mars. And this came in a few points. We had the advertising insert in a local journal, a sponsorship of an exhibition at the engine room at Massey, and a public billboard on Ghuzney Street, which was actually commissioned by the City Council. And then I worked with Leading Space, who are a public art commissioning group based out of Wellington, to stage a real estate showroom on Lower Taranaki Street. We had a real estate agent in the showroom on Saturdays helping people around. She was a local actress, Heather O'Carroll, who did an amazing job. We had stock photography, posters, and all sorts of actual architectural model that I collaborated with the architect Rachel Logie to develop. And that ended up in the Dunedin Public Art Gallery and ended up becoming a destination video for Air New Zealand's in-flight entertainment program, whereby people on international flights could sit down and watch a destination video for Pioneer City as if they were on the way there. And also made a website, pioneercity.com, which is still up. There was an expression of interest form based on the New Zealand Immigration Expression of Interest form where people could sign up, and we're still getting sign-ups. And there was a weekly e-newsletter from Helen. And one of the surprising things that happened out of this project was that Room 11 at Lyle Bay School actually got fascinated by the project and ended up building their own pioneer cities and designing their own pioneer city flag and things like that. So I went along and talked to them. It was pretty brilliant. And the third project is Whisper Down the Lane, which this was an exhibition at City Gallery in Wellington as part of the Obstinate Object, which is a big survey of contemporary New Zealand sculpture. And I was invited by the curators, Aaron Lister and Abby Kinay, to develop some sort of 3D printing project. And so I thought it would be really interesting to trial this new technology where you can take photographs of work, upload it to some software in the cloud, and it will automatically generate a 3D model. And so I worked with Ant Pelosi and Nick Graham, a couple of designers, to go in there and actually photograph and make digital models of other works in the show and print them as 3D miniatures and upload them to the web. So here's a few examples. There are 12 in total, ranging from very small to very big. This particular inflatable number was quite a challenge, David Cross. And that was the final installation. And this is quite interesting, just thinking about what Tom was saying, that I had real issues about whether to ask the artists for permission or not, because I've had a bit of knowledge and have studied copyright in my past and things like that, and felt like it was a grey area in terms of whether this would be infringing or not, but decided to ask them anyway because I think there are other protocols at play in the art world in New Zealand, which is quite small and friendly, and and actually found myself being hounded by the artists in the show who were desperate to know when I was going to do their work. So they were like, wanted the mini-me's of their works, and it's actually been a really lovely way to form relationships. And that too has been picked up. There have been a few user prints through Thingiverse, and Rohan Whalen's Janikot Vader made it into Mars as well, which I think might be a potential future for some of these works. And so those are the three projects. For me, next, I'm becoming more interested in internet infrastructure and the kind of physical side of things. I'm researching the Southern Cross Cable, and I've actually found this mural from 1962 by Wellington artist Emu Van Taylor. He actually died 3 years after making this mural, so it falls out of copyright, we think, unless it's a Crown copyright situation, next year. So I found this stacked in boxes in the disused compact station and have since got hold of it and have been restoring it and digitising, and all of the images for the mural are now online for download under a Creative Commons license. And there are 16 missing tiles that we're looking at restoring and actually reinstating this mural permanently in a as yet unspecified location. So yeah, I'll be talking a bit more about this at the National Digital Forum. But yeah, that's about me. Find more Bronwyn.co.nz. Thank you.
Thanks, Bronwyn. So it's official, not only is there life on Mars, there's art on Mars as well. Brilliant. Final panel speaker is Rollo Wenlock. Please welcome Rollo.
Hello, everyone. I'll just move this up. It'll take ages doing this. If anybody wants to help, I'll be happy to. There we are. So I'm Rollo Wenlock. I am a software entrepreneur and a filmmaker. And for the next 2 hours, I'm going to be telling you about the future of video. So video, as I see it, and a lot of what I say is going to be made up by me. So, this isn't the actual facts. But video, as I see it, has three parts. One of them is entertainment, one of them is information, and one of them is communication. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the past of all of those three, and then how that relates to the future. And the overarching theme that I see in video is that, especially on the internet, which is all I'll talk about, is the humanization of the web through video. And I think the interesting thing is that when you look at anything that video is doing, all it's doing is enhancing something that we were already doing. So if we start with entertainment, films are essentially a future version of plays. Information, we began with the written word, which was good, but I think that was just a gateway technology to video. And then it moved through to video where you can actually take in information. I don't know the exact number, I'll say five times faster with video than reading, which is intriguing. And then communication is that in the past, you would go in, if you want to do business with someone, you would go to their office and go, "Hello, Tom, how you doing?" He goes, "Not bad." And you'd say, "Shall we do some business?" And he goes, "Yeah, you look all right." And off you do, you just do some business. And now, what people are doing are sending an email and going, "Hi, Tom," and he goes, "Oh, is this spam? What's going on here?" I'll delete it. No business with Tom. It's not going to happen. Tom's not interested. You're in the spam folder. So what video's doing, and it's already doing it, is that you send a video of yourself saying, "Hi, Tom, I'm Eric, and I'd love to do some business." And because it's a video just for Tom, and it plays when he clicks it, he goes, "Oh yeah, that sounds all right. I'll Skype him back, or Google Hangout with him." And off you go. You're doing business with someone that you can't walk into the office of, which is pretty cool. And then with information, and this ties back to entertainment as well, because entertainment, as we know, is one of the great ways of sharing information without boring people to death. What we're seeing is that the dry written word, which not all written words are dry, and I'm in a library. I'm about to get shot and hung out the front. The dry written word doesn't translate to video. If you have somebody talking, going, "Hi, I'm Tom from blah, blah, blah," and he's going on about some information, you just don't watch the video, and then Tom's information doesn't get out. And so what you're seeing is that people are more and more understanding video, and that they're actually using it for themselves. So anyone in this room can make a video for no cost. You can use your camera. Your camera, this is an interesting fact, the camera in your pocket is pretty much better than the camera than they used to make 2001: A Space Odyssey. So any of you can go and make 2002: A Space Odyssey. You just get your camera out. And so that neatly ties into the future. So when we look at entertainment, I've just been explaining that essentially plays turned into moving pictures that anyone can see anywhere. And then we've got information, which is being able to share what was written quicker with pictures. And then we've got communication, which is you don't have to go to Tom's office to do business with him anymore. You can do business with Tom from afar. And so when we look from that, which you can do today, into the future, my hypothesis is that you will see much more of a combination of those three coming together. And you will see much less of what the web looks like now, which is text and pages and HTML and all those things, where you have much more of an experience of going through they're even called pages. You'll have much less of that type of experience. You'll be on a screen, and without really thinking about the experience, you'll be having a human experience to get your information, to be entertained, or to communicate. And I mean, we're seeing that already happening now, but it's only on the very edge. I mean, I would imagine that maybe 10% or maybe 20% of you all have answered the phone, been talking on it, and then turned it into a FaceTime call, and so actually chosen to have a video call with that person after starting it with a normal call. Soon, my hypothesis is that will just go straight ahead. You'll just answer the phone going, "Oh, hi Tom, yes, let's do some more business." And in terms of the information that Tom wants to send you, he'll send you him talking about it, and he'll send you videos of what he means rather than just things to read. And it'll become much more ambient. So you'll just be watching, listening, you'll come and go, you'll move it over, still listen, but look at something else that's happening, and then you'll be talking to somebody else, and then say, have a look at this, and click that, and off you go. And that's just, I mean, in the mobile device. And it'll be also just everywhere. So when you're walking down the street, much like sci-fi films, I'm sure you've all seen Minority Report, one of Tom Cruise's best work. And he's walking through a mall. And what's happening there is that as he goes past the big advert, it goes, hi, I'll just call him Tom Cruise. Hi, Tom Cruise, this jacket will look great on you. And it takes a picture of him, puts his face onto a model and shows this great jacket. And he has a look and goes, oh, that does look quite good. And he'll probably go and buy it. And so that type of thing of video becoming very personal is going to be another part of everything around you, is that you'll be having a personal experience. And I suppose the most extreme version of this is that you go towards the Matrix, and you go, well, we're just going to be naked in a glass jar, plugged into a cable, and it's all going straight past your eyes. It's just going straight into your brain, and your entire experience is a virtual reality, which is just video, and the whole lot is just made up so that you can have what you think is an experience. And I think that's quite interesting, because that's already happening right now. When you go and watch a film, what your brain is doing is putting you into that scenario. And so you're already doing that to a certain degree. So it's only one step further for us to actually disappear into a completely virtual experience and just be that non-human. I'm hoping we don't go completely there. But another part about the future of video is that we also have to be very careful that we don't overdo it. I've got a child who's 2, and we actively make sure that she doesn't look at screens, because people below the age of about 3 or so, their eyes can't deal with it, and it causes erratic things to happen in their brain. But lots of people do let them watch it, and then it has unknown side effects. And so that's where I'm intrigued by the technology going forward. I'm sort of hoping that video will move into being more organic somehow, which is, bypassing screens, bypassing all those things. But that's just one aspect that I'm kind of worried about, that if it doesn't, what's going to happen to us? Are we all going to actually have side effects that we don't know about yet? And what happens if we become reliant on that sort of information being transferred, and then we can't do it anymore? What's going to happen to society? So that's of interest to me as well. But to end, what I would see as the overarching future of video altogether, which is what I said at the start, is that it's really, especially on the internet, it's really a human experience. Video is the most human experience I think you can have with technology. It goes beyond everything else, and the more that happens, I think the more all the strange things in society have a chance of fading away, because we're able to humanly connect with more people across the world, much like Tom's trying to do business with me, And I think that if that can continue and not be a negative technological problem, which it could be, I think humanity has a chance. So I'll end on that. Humanity has a chance. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rollo. So we have plenty of time for question and answer session. We've had some terrific food for thought there. I'm sure there must be some questions out in the audience somewhere. We'll bring the speakers up here so you can ask them any question you want. They might not answer the question, but you can ask them any question you want. It would be helpful. We have a roving mic, I believe, and it would be helpful if you said your name, and if you want to say where you're from, that's good too. We do have another mic? Yes, we do. So, who would like to go first? I have a question here. Thanks. Just here.
Hi, was it Rowan? I'm not sure if you're the person who's speaking last.
Me?
Yeah.
Rollo.
My question is about whether you've thought about how to actually engage all of those people who don't have access to the technology. Like, I don't have a smartphone. I know that there's a lot of people in the disability community who feel a bit left out, where there's assumptions about everybody being able to see, everybody being able to hear, everybody actually having access to this. And in New Zealand, 1 in 3 people are living with a disability, and we've got an ageing population. So the possibilities of technology are great, but how do you actually make sure that everybody's got access to it?
Well, as the President of America, I will give you the answer. Jesus. So what you're saying is very vast. I mean, that's kind of the biggest question, is that how do you give everything to everyone? And you can't. So that's the short answer. But the slightly longer answer is that the joy of technology is it's malleable to the user. Whoever is in need of a solution, which is all technology is, it's a solution to a problem, is that you can equate that answer to the problem. So if you say people are aging and their eyesight is getting worse, or they can't hear anything, or there's people with disabilities who can't touch things, you have all the receptors in technology to make bespoke pieces of technology for them to use, so that they can use the same information coming in and use the same protocols to share, but they use different inputs. So if they haven't got any arms, then it could be based on gesture. If they can't see, then it's all based on sound and touch. And all of these things exist to some level now. It's just the thing that you may not like is that it's all based on business. So if the demand isn't big enough and there's not going to be a profit margin and there's no one there who's just going to do it for free, it won't happen. So that's a problem that just exists in the world. That's my answer.
Next question just behind.
Sure. My name is Mary Kahle from Wellington here. It was a very opportune comment, Rollo, because my question was going to be, and still is, how do you see the balance between corporate development and sort of crowdsourcing development in these future developments? And that would be cool for often.
So crowdsourcing connected to business.
Well, not necessarily formal crowdsourcing, but individual enterprise rather than corporate enterprise.
Right. I don't think I understand the question of individual enterprise. What does that mean? Unless you guys know what it means.
How much do you see the future developments being generated by corporates, and how much just by individuals?
Oh, I see.
A good idea, or
Yeah.
Groups of individuals.
Well, I mean, the thing is that I've been in a startup now for a year and a half, which is essentially a small group of people who come together to try and solve a problem with a solution that should be able to scale and be used by loads of people. And that's just a small group of people who just go, here we go, let's get some money together and let's try and create a sustainable business, whether it's based on profit or not. You still have to make something sustainable. And so I view it that all the corporate world and all enterprise is a group of people doing something. Sometimes they got really big, sometimes they didn't. My personal opinion is that the world of the massive enterprise is probably coming to an end because there's no need for that structure anymore. We came out of the Industrial Revolution, and the way to go was to go big. So you go bigger and bigger, make bigger companies, and they all buy each other, and off they go. But I don't think there's any need for that anymore. So the idea of smaller groups being able to make solutions that are used by more people is happening right now. So our company has 7 people in it, and it's being used all over the world. And so in the past, that would have to be a team of maybe 1,000 to do the same thing. So the opportunity is there now for a lot of smaller groups to fix problems. But the issue is always, are they actually making a sustainable engine, whether it's to make money or to be something that other people will keep using? That's the bigger problem, not is the evil enterprise going to take us all. I think it's possible, but it's always about the success of the little business that can be big or medium or whatever. That's my opinion.
I love this question because I think we're in the middle of a war, of sort of 2 very different futures that are feeling like they're sort of splitting. There's sort of the hyper lockdown corporate thing, and there's the, hey, isn't this fun? let's go and open this stuff up. Let's do some more mashups. Let's go and make these 3D printed things. Let's go and make it so that individuals can go and have a world stage, even if it's for a short time, and just have a whole heck of a lot of fun. I love that the web went and invalidated one of the premises that I grew up being taught, which is people will only do things if you pay them. Otherwise, they'll just sit there and they'll wait for the next, Madonna CD to come out. And it just turns out to not be true. People are really interesting, quirky, bizarre creatures. And so we've seen this proliferation out there. And I love the web because it's weird. It's just us out there. And then there's this thing, right? It sort of looks a little bit like 2001. And it's locked down on every level. So it only has applications that Apple say are okay to be on it. And then it has an operating system that if you want to make a change to it, it's called jailbreaking. Like, yeah. And then there's, it's on a communication network that, the United States gets to have AT&T and Comcast, which are just two of the most hideous organizations ever. And so we have sort of two very different points of view happening right at the same time. And I have to, I'm throwing everything I can at one side or the other. So we run an organization where we give everything away. And we just, if you open things up, interesting things happen. And we're still able to make it go. Wikipedia makes it go by giving everything away. But there's also real work on the other side. And I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's one of the dramas that is really interesting right now, and it's going to be solved by us. I mean, this is all just made up, and it's going to be made up by us. I certainly hope it's going to go one way, but I'm a little bipolar. Sometimes I wake up depressed.
Perhaps at this point I should say that the views of our panel speakers are not necessarily the views of the National Library of New Zealand. But we love hearing all of these different views. Just a bit of a health and safety warning, I suppose. No, fantastic. It's just your comments about ATT and Comcast.
Oh, yeah. Erase those from the record, will you? Yeah.
But feel free. I'm not trying to stifle any discussion here. We are a platform for open discussion. Next question.
Hi, I'm Chris McDowell from Digital New Zealand National Library. This is I'm quite interested in what Brewster has to say about this, but I guess I study archaeology at university, and my professors would often bemoan the fact that they only had, for many ancient peoples, of monumental architecture and a few sort of quite durable aspects of everyday life, but most of the things of lived experience of 500,000, many thousands of years ago were not available. Now we're archiving more and more stuff. But I guess I was wondering, what are the things that we're missing? What are the things that in 100 or 200 or 500 years' time that historians will look back on 2014 and go, oh, I wish there was some record of this so we could understand the. Does that make sense?
Asking me?
I'll have a go. I'll have a crack. And I think this kind of relates to what was discussed in the previous questions about accessibility and kind of the digital divide is something that's been thrown around. I think, there's a sense that the internet is prolific and everybody has access to it, but there is still a large portion of the world population who can't afford to have access to it, and that's affording to have smartphones or their own computers or to be able to pay for internet connections. And I think the voices of those people are at risk of being lost if they're not given the opportunity to engage. And so, even though the internet feels like this utopian great thing, it's still a question of privilege. It's still, I feel, like a good privileged middle-class white girl to be up here talking about the internet that I use a lot because I'm a middle-class white girl. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a real worry to me anyway. And I think that there could be more done to ensure that the internet is more of a democratic platform or a more open platform. So that could happen on a government level. I mean, there are two kind of schools of thought. I've been reading this book recently called Tubes by Andrew Bloom, where he traces the physical kind of sites of the internet, the actual fibre cables, traces them to the data stations and data centres. And I just read about the Dutch approach to internet infrastructure, where they looked at it and they thought, oh, this is just another harbour, this is just another port, like Rotterdam is for ships or Schiphol is for airplanes. This is just another kind of place for stuff and trade and military use. And when the roads were dug up to put fibre in, they made a policy where if one company was digging up the road to lay fibre, then anybody could come along and lay fibre and they would have to split the costs. And as a result, they've got a very robust, very diverse network. And I think there's a very different thing happening in New Zealand at the moment with the broadband rollout. But I think, there can be decisions made at policy level. But then, other people say, well, the government should just get out of the way of the regulation of the internet and just let it happen in its own way and let, free market decide. But I don't know that free market's really all that free if people who, have opinions don't get given a place to voice their concerns. Yeah, go.
I think it's a great question by Chris on sort of preservation and how you track lived experience online, because a big part of tracking how people engage with books has been, and Leah Price is a really good example of this. People will engage with what I was calling the paratext. They'll go back through library records and look at annotations that were in print books, and they'll look at even things like how the book was used and read, and the point at which the annotations might run out, and the library records for the books. And there's that sort of information and history that I always am terrified by whenever I see stories about libraries having skips out the back and they're chucking their print books out, because I think that's a really big, I think it's a tragic thing. But with digital books, I think at the moment it's even worse, because as a publisher, our ability to preserve digital books is if you can get around the commercial restrictions, they're actually fine. We can preserve them. You can do it on a relatively long-term basis, but we don't have the reader data. We have no understanding of how people are actually engaging with these books over time, and that's going to be a persistent issue. I think, we might have these beautifully preserved ebooks in 100 or 200 or 300 years' time, ideally, hopefully, but with very little understanding of how they were used and how they were read. And I think that, in publishing, one of the big issues is how we can actually get a better sense of data and usage of these materials online.
What might we miss in archiving? It might be something as simple as air samples, or something that we sort of really wanted water samples and we just didn't get them. I don't know, but to be a little less depressing. The thing I love is in early parts of a technology, you have the dreamers. There are these people that sort of think maybe this technology is going to help me in some problem I have. And it's before they get disappointed when, so television just didn't turn out to be that great, or, fax machines, there was fax machine art, right? And there were these sort of cool, weird things. Remember when answering machines came out? There were these really cool answering machine messages before they all, I don't know, nobody even seems to record an answering machine message anymore. So I like the early parts of technologies when you can see people's dreams. And the web had a pile of these, of people saying, hey, this is going to help, democratize something or other, or I can now finally get my works out there. This is, my platform as a poet, or whatever it is. So I would go for the earliest stage of things as you can. As new technologies come along, get the early things when people are doing wacko things, because that's really what we as technologists should be building to support. And I love the dreams.
Another question.
Yeah, my name's Ian Strafford, day job, Ministry of Education, and I'm here as a human. says there's hope for society, and most days I think yes. But either way, can you please indicate what the biggest threat is to that hope in terms of the web, or the biggest opportunity? I think Carol's just mentioned like one of the huge opportunities, which is human creativity, but it's your answer, not mine. So greatest risk, greatest hope.
Is it you? I think you know.
You-
the
you-
biggest risk. Jump in.
Me? Oh. The Snowden revelations have just been a fricking nightmare. That we've taken a generation of amazing trust. My sister had a journal that had a little lock on it, and this was to keep it from me. And I think the equivalent of my sister now would have posted this in a live journal or a blog, or has just shared it completely openly. When I went to college, my parents said, be careful what clubs you join, because of what they might become might get you in trouble with the government. These are people that grew up with McCarthy and the whole sort of fear of expression of yourself, of just keep your head down, right? Just act kind of normal, even if you don't like it. You know, it wasn't all sort of hooray in the 50s, right? Things were a little oppressive. But we've had this blossoming of trust and exposure of people's ideas and fears and loves and creativity. And then what we found the United States government doing at scale was betraying this trust. And so I think as organizations, as the establishment that we are, we need to go and do anything we can to put in place structures to protect those that are using our services digitally. We do not record IP addresses of readers, so we don't know who reads what. So when people come and read and whatever, they can use our services, and we don't know who they are. It cuts short questions, conversations that we never wanted to have with law enforcement and lawyers and the like. And we just say, we don't know, and they go away. And it allowed us, by being a library, when the FBI came and demanded information with a gag order under a national security letter, a wonderful thing out of our Patriot Act, to go and find out what a patron was doing and what they were up to and everything we knew about them. And we said no. And the only way to say no to the FBI in one of these things is to sue them. So we sued them. And as a library, we won. And that this sort of thing this type of learning that we've had over centuries of the history of problems of not just governments, but corporations and other organizations, the church, whatever it was in the past, organizing around against individuals. We need to go and put in more safeguards in our systems and in our organizations so that we basically make it so that it is a world that we can trust. Otherwise, it will really shrivel. It'll go off into the land of apps and video games that are owned and controlled by folks you don't want to.
I have something small to add to that. Facebook, you all know Facebook, right? They did a cool experiment a little while ago, which I can't remember if they were supposed to tell people or not, but there's a thing called A/B testing, which is where you do two different things at the same time to a split of the audience. And this is quite intriguing because what we maybe sometimes forget is that like no time in history, you can give exactly the same thing to as many people who have access to technology at the same time. So you can create the exact same experience across the planet like that. So what Facebook did was that they did a small experiment on maybe, 500,000 people, where they did an A/B test. They controlled everyone's news feed, and they controlled whether they would see happy news or sad news. And then I can't remember how they checked it out, but somehow they figured out that the people who saw sad news got sadder. Now it's pretty innocuous. It's not that dramatic. I got a little bit sad because I looked at some news. Happens anyway. But that's just the edge of a way of thinking about information being able to get to the masses and being able to subtly change psychology. to make people feel certain things. And advertising is like the kingpin of being able to do that. It's been a 70-year experiment of trying to make advertising make you do something in the shortest amount of time, which was all going into people's homes. And you kind of couldn't control it because the TV would just stop playing the TV show and then the adverts would come on, so you go and have a cup of tea, or you can't be bothered and you watch it. But now you're actively choosing to do some things, and it's happening without you knowing. So I'm not saying it's a big problem, I'm just saying it's something to think about, that's all.
Another question?
Happier one.
Yeah.
Cat videos, let's talk about cat videos.
Question over here.
So, question for Bronwyn. Can you please tell us a story about the mural? Slightly relevant.
I'll tell you a short version because I don't want to spoil the, presentation I'm giving on Wednesday. I was just thinking about the response to the question about what's my big worry. And the thing is that I'm researching the Southern Cross Cable, which carries 98% of New Zealand's international internet traffic and physically goes out at Takapuna Beach up to Hawaii, across to the States. Actually, this backwards map now because I was doing it on the Takapuna, Hawaii, States, Fiji, Sydney, and in Murawai Beach on the other side. And it's operated by Telecom, now Spark, in New Zealand, and the other parts are owned by, I think, AT&T and, I should know the other one. I've been researching this and kind of going in and out of phases of slight paranoia that this will set off some alarm somewhere. But heard kind of through my research that there was a mural installed in the landing station of the Southern Cross Cable in Northcote near Takapuna. And I thought, that's quite interesting and could be quite relevant to my research into cultural connections with the Southern Cross Cable. And got in touch with them to ask if I could go and photograph it. And a station manager said, there's a mural there years ago, but it's been removed and there's not many people who would remember it now. So I went to archives over there and searched an image and found the image I showed you earlier from 1975 of the image of Maui fishing up the North Island by Emu Van Taylor, and that was in the kind of foyer of the station. And at the time, it was commissioned by the New Zealand government to mark the opening of the Compact cable, which was the Commonwealth Pacific cable linking a whole lot of Commonwealth countries, reinforcing geopolitical ties after World War II. And it was a telephone cable that actually paved the way, literally, in terms of infrastructure for the Southern Cross Cable. And it comes up in the same complex as the Southern Cross Cable. And so that was operated by the government, the New Zealand Post Office. People could walk in off the street and sign a visitor's book and see the mural and kind of learn about the cable. And then in the 1980s, the New Zealand Post Office was split into state-owned assets by the Labour government because the country was broke after Muldoon. And that's when Telecom was created, took over management, and then Telecom was sold off in the 90s. And at some point around then, this high-security perimeter fence was built around the complex, and the mural was taken down and put in cardboard boxes until I asked them about it and found it and drove it to Wellington in a rental car and have been cleaning it up and digitising it and putting it online. So we're at this point now we've found that there are 414 tiles in the image in total, and there are 16 missing tiles. So we're trying to find a ceramicist who might be able to make replicas. If anyone knows of somebody with these particular skills, please let me know. And have it reinstalled somewhere, hopefully in a publicly accessible place more permanently. So, that's where it's at. Thanks.
Question here.
rhetorical kind of understands that question for all of you. What will we be talking about archiving in 2020? What's music done? What's next?
You've got a small answer there. You might be archiving human data. You might be looking at being able to take the digital replica of a human, and then also anything from the past. I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know completely, but they're looking at animals that don't exist anymore and bringing them back because they've actually got the data set, and then they can just reproduce it. So maybe that's it. That's one thing that I'm having to think about. Have you got any?
Buildings, sculptures, the 3D aspects look like that's for stay, but it's not sort of being demanded yet. But if you could walk through Paris at a different time, either virtually or printed.
It's kind of like Street View or something. I'm going to say food. Kind of, yeah, I guess building on Rollo's. I don't know if they'll be archiving humans because I think there's maybe some ethical issues around that. But yeah, I think we're getting to this point where we're being able to 3D print meat, like in vitro meat. I don't know if you guys have heard of this really amazing potential for vegetarians in the future. But yeah, I think it's getting to a point where we're, in the biomolecular science, we're figuring out the codes for particular foodstuffs and potentially being able to produce them with printers and so forth. So I think it'd be really interesting to download a recipe for a particular kind of meat.
I want to say something really profound, but all I can think of is cat images after Rollo's. I guess, again, betraying my prejudices, I'd like to be more confident that we can archive books properly. It's sort of in terms of the full long-term preservation of them. I'm pessimistic about, how we can access these titles in a multi-generational sort of way. So I would be perfectly happy if we have good long-term preservation of books, and it's where the National Library, I think, has a really important role to play. And it's certainly for an independent publisher like us, it's very hard for us to do self-preservation. There are publishers out there that are using Amazon Glacier to archive their titles, and that's the sort of it's doing that sort of long-term preservation. I think is a really big challenge.
I just had another idea. Smells.
Oh, nice.
Scent. Yeah, olfactory stuff. That'd be cool.
And one other thing I was just reminded of, because I'm currently doing my family tree on Ancestry.com, and a lot of the history that they find is based on just weird notes on things, and it's just all the little human bits around data being put somewhere, how you do your signature, all those things. And at the moment, everything that people do online is being saved. It's all being tracked, whether you like it or not, but it is. And I think that's intriguing, even just texting your partner saying, yeah, I'll get the eggs on the way home. Oh, I forgot. How you say it, that type of thing. It's all being saved. And that sort of human interaction data around all the formal lines, but just the stuff around the edges, it's all going to be there. And you can somehow build things that can read it as en masse. You can watch 6 billion people. Well, not yet, but you can watch 2 billion middle-class white people doing their thing. And I think that's pretty cool.
So perhaps I can use my chairman's privilege to ask the last question of each of the panelists. If you had one wish for anything to do with internet future, what would you want to change? You can be king for the day or prime minister for the year, whatever. You've got one wish to unblock some of the blockages, to do things that you really want to do? Or is there nothing getting in your way?
No, there's nothing getting in the way. I wouldn't want to change anything, just add things.
I'd really like to have everything in the collections of the National Library of New Zealand online. all the books, music, video available to every citizen in New Zealand. Please.
Thanks, Brewster. I'll see you afterwards.
I really like it to be free for everybody. Yeah. Just no subscription fees or anything, that kind of thing.
I'm as a publisher and someone who makes their living out of copyright, I'm feeling quite challenged now. So I don't know. I think I'd like the web to be more decentralized. I'd like it to be an environment in which, you know, Jason Darwin's ReadKit enables people to sort of access a book solely independently and on its own terms. That's the sort of future I'm interested in.
Thanks very much. Anybody with one last burning question? We've probably got time for one quick question if anybody's desperate to ask a question. No? In that case, can I just say a couple of thank yous, obviously to our speakers, also to Internet New Zealand, whose help has been invaluable in bringing together this session, and of course to the National Digital Forum and all the people who work hard at that. And I know that there's a whole squad of folk working hard behind the scenes who have brought this event together this evening, so thanks to them. But can you thank all the speakers again once more? Thank you.